The World Tomorrow. The Worldwide Church of God presents Herbert W. Armstrong.
And I'm here to bring you the truth. No one else is telling you the things that God is telling you through me. He's speaking through me.
The Lord let me experience what it is to be a new bride. You know, I'm not worried about what I'm about to say, though it may be graphic. We're coming to the Lord, and if you can take it, beyond the veil is the chamber. That's the wedding chamber. The Lord told me that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cult Next Door podcast. I am Mattie Lassiter, joined as always by my sister Ashleigh Teeter. Before we get started with today's episode, want to remind everyone to follow us. We're on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. Go and follow us if you haven't already. We drop reels and posts and other stuff there. It's kind of good to help keep up with what we're doing. Also want to do our Double Portion Club shout outs real quick. We have Chase and Shanda. Thank you guys. David Brown. Salute to David. And then one of our newer members, Heather Bartlett. Thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. It means a lot to us. So if you also want to be part of the Double Portion Club, you can join our Patreon for our $10 tier. Or if you just want to support the podcast, you're not money bags over there and you want to do $5 a month, you can do that and get some ad-free episodes and just kind of help support the podcast. So before we get started with this episode, want to do a little intro for it. This is actually an episode that we recorded in October-ish of 2023. So this is old. This was kind of what I've called more of a roundtable type of episode. There was no table, but we were kind of in a little semicircle of people. I think we had 4 total guests on. So it was our sister Jen, our friend Sandy, who has been on the episode previously, Ashley, and then myself. And some of you will have seen on our socials the little video that we did talking about the fire rat from heaven. That is where this episode is where that reel came from. So that can kind of give you an idea of the vibe of this episode. It's mostly uncut. It's not really it doesn't follow a traditional storyline, so to speak, but it's a lot about the love move and just some of the weird things where we're just kind of basically sitting around together, kind of reminiscing a little bit about what that time was like. And then for Ashley, she's in shock half the time of some of the things she's hearing. But I cut this episode together several months ago, just kind of for fun. And I really enjoyed it. It had been long enough that I didn't remember everything that we talked about, and I thought it was good. So Ashley and I talked, and we thought, you know what, other people are probably going to like that too. We thought it was worth sharing with everybody.
Yeah, and I've watched that reel about the fire rat from heaven repeatedly, and I still laugh to the point of crying every time. It's hysterical.
So we hope that you guys find it as entertaining and enlightening and as funny as we did when we were recording it and listening back. So with that said, here is our roundtable episode about the love move and the fire rat.
Last night, I received the revelation of a prophetic dream I had last year. In the dream, I was in the water praying over a woman I was about to baptize when suddenly crocodiles rushed in to devour her. But I kept praying and easily kicked the crocodiles away. Then suddenly the devil sent a giant crocodile called Pretense, but with one backhand slap I disposed of him. Then the water we were standing in suddenly disappeared and dry ground appeared. The sister and I climbed up on the bank, and as we turned, we saw a massive male lion raging and charging at us. I was able to fight him off because he couldn't get up the embankment. But then he suddenly turned and ran down to a place where he could come up on level ground with me. The brethren were all around between the lion and me, but he was focused only on me. My back was against a massive wall, and I had no place to go. The lion fixed his eyes on me as he paced back and forth, but he was reluctant to charge me. He was wary and was studying how he should attack. I thought, if I had a weapon, I could shoot and kill this lion. So I looked over to my son Michael and said, "Get my gun." but he wasn't looking, nor was he aware of what was happening. And that's how the dream ended. And here's the revelation. The crocodiles were demons that had been sent to attack me, the church, and our ministry. Pretense was sent to devour the sister because she was receiving a powerful anointing as I prayed over her. We have been battling the powerful demon Pretense for years, and the Lord had told us that Satan had assigned him to work against our church. But I believe that he is gone now because I haven't seen any evidence in months. Last night, the Lord revealed to me that the lion is the devil himself and will come soon to kill me. The Lord revealed that the devil has permission to kill me if he can, but that with the right weapon, I can kill, not literally kill, but banish him from hampering our ministry, render him powerless. In the dream, I didn't think I had that weapon, but this morning the Lord told me that the weapon needed for my victory and his defeat is faith. The Lord told me that one day I would be alone. It is this moment to come when I must face the devil directly and alone. Just before I received the dream during a Friday night praise and prayer service, a brother saw fire fall on our lamp table and the stage. He ran up to put the fire out, but it had disappeared. It was fire from heaven. God.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about that rat.
That's what it was. It was a rat.
First outtake. Yeah, that makes it perfect, doesn't it? Like fire from heaven. It was a rat.
Fire rat from heaven.
Oh.
Man, I knew not to even look at you, and I didn't. I didn't even look, but you were in my periphery.
There were multiple times I was going to crack. That's
I
just the best.
know, okay. And here we go. Okay, yes. Okay. Okay. It was fire from heaven. Okay, I gotta get all these gigs out.
Fire from heaven. Even Chris, but later on was like, "There's a fucking rat." You knew we had rats at the church. Yeah.
And it was also just running along the top of the.
Also, it's just
those
like,
beautiful, very special marble.
the Holy Spirit was.
Oh, Hobby Lobby
and
letters.
Hobby Lobby letters.
A rat from heaven.
The rat from heaven was running across our PVC marble.
Have you ever noticed stuff like that in like demonic activity? It's just so lame and weak. And it's like God could rain fire down and just,
That's absolutely
but
right.
it's like
tear the roof off the church and say hello. Yeah.
Or it's like a light flickers or you hear a sound somewhere and it's like it's demons, Or
you see a dad said he saw a little cloud in the ceiling with Brother Joseph while you were singing praises, and it was the Shekinah glory of the Lord cloud. It's like nobody else saw that shit. Do something demonstrative. You can. It's like it was always that crazy disconnect between like God of the Old Testament, who would like part the Red Sea and do all these
burning bush.
Yes, incredible, like undeniable pillar of fire and
now
cloud.
it's like Jesus' face on a piece of toast or something.
If you're lucky, if you're very lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
That's right. Okay. Oh, right, you guys, Matt, keep it together. Okay.
Trauma.
Okay. God has told me to build a golden altar.
Wait, don't you need to go back?
I laughed right after it was fire from heaven.
Okay. It's like burst out. Okay, sorry.
It took a second. I was trying to keep it. Okay, I'll start the paragraph.
And also the golden
Sandy,
altar.
take us through a meditation.
Yes, all right, everyone relax. Find your mats. We are going
Sandy
to...
loves the golden altar. He loved that altar. Then he loves it now.
I still
so
love it.
golden.
Still love that golden altar.
Golden. All right.
It wasn't actually golden.
Wasn't it
like
gold
I
leaf?
told everybody.
Wasn't it gold leaf or something?
Yeah.
24 karat double gold
Remember,
leaf.
he kept on talking about
Had to tell us
how much he spent on it, but he was like, I'm not even going to tell you how much.
Where'd you get the money?
Yeah. Remember, he made a big deal about that. I'm not even going to tell you how much it was. I spent too much on this. And we're like,
y'all were going to be stoned if you damaged those altars when transporting them.
I forgot how crazy he was with transporting those to the feast in Cersei. He was like, and they were wrapped up with bubble wrap and all.
I need to see this. I can't even envision this. I don't know what it
looks like.
It's a
bench.
It's a bench.
It is?
Yes, with leather covers.
Literally like a bench, like a bench.
Oh, it's in one of the photos I sent.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can see it a little bit. I'll just give you the context.
How many?
There was also the altar of consecration, which was below the marriage carriage, which is where you brought any of your...
That?
Is that it?
That just looks like the bench in our foyer.
That's what I'm saying. And then there's another.
Wait, let me see.
Were you expecting?
No, but what if it is gold?
It's a gold leaf overlaid. And then the seat cushion was gold pleather.
Wait.
Yeah.
So the legs were gold leaf?
Is that
That's all it was?
The gold
Yeah,
leaf?
the wood.
The base,
the wood
the
around
wood
it was
overlaid
gold.
with gold leaf.
I believe it was particle board as well.
Was it?
Oh my God.
Wasn't it?
That's
Yeah, I
just
envisioned
classic
something
dad
totally
right there.
different.
Yeah. And then, you can kind of see in front of Blake another one with pleather, and this one had maroon.
Can I see it?
It's maroon.
So are people
And then the one behind
kneeling at it? Or
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly that. Exactly
Nice.
that.
But was he worried about someone sweating on it or?
No,
Don't worry about what it looks like, Ashley.
that's right.
You
That's
just,
right.
just get into it.
Okay, I'm going to start the whole paragraph over here. Oh, I don't know if I can because I have to say that.
You can do it.
I have to say that it was far.
Oh, you do?
Hold on, I don't know if I can.
You can do
You
it.
can do it.
Yeah, but
do it.
you're probably going to do
Dad.
Probably.
Dad's.
All
AI.
right.
Yeah.
Let's. Oh, then I don't have to redo it. Okay. God has told me to build a golden altar to place in that spot, and that he will send his holy fire upon it, and that it will spread all over the world through our ministry. This is why I've been writing and preaching about the fire on the arrow and kindling afresh the fire in others and passing the flame. And after that, we have the cloaks of humility and the reckoning are both right there.
Really love the cloaks too. That was big for me. I remember writing cloak on my arm so that when I would, because I'm working and I'm like, remember, take that animal feces, rub it on your face, man. He said that. That's what he said. I mean, yeah.
Oh my God.
I know she's in the dark right now, but
Yeah.
The cloaks.
Can somebody explain the cloaks?
Well, can we explain what people just heard?
Thank you.
Like what you just heard.
That'd probably be best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you just heard was a prophecy that our dad received in 2018.
A dream.
A dream in 2018. And then in 2019 was the interpretation of that dream. And that's kind of where we're starting with this piece, because that's when there was a shift in the church where things really changed. So we're going to do our best to kind of delve into that. It's not going to be every single thing that happened. There's not enough time in the world to talk about everything that happened, but to kind of give our best recollection of the major important points that were really moments of a change during our time in Crusade Church.
Leading up to the interpretation of this dream, Dad was very discontent with the state of the church. We had a group of really devoted, sincere, loyal people. It wasn't a large group, but the people that were there were very in. But that was not enough. And I think that it's important to note that so often men in these positions are projecting their own inner world. And I find that to be true here. Dad was just, it was not enough. He didn't feel like he was enough. And, that's why they so often project grandiosity. It's really a cover. They call it a mask for a reason. So I think that prior to this, his sermons and his overall attitude reflected just a real dissatisfaction with the fact that we were not having healings every week and lots of prophecies from people who had those gifts. And he wanted so much more. And he would kind of get angry about it. And he would give sermons where there was an angry tone because we just weren't measuring up to his idea of what this very special elect group of people should be and should be doing, and what the church should be like, and how we should be changing our community and our world. And so he had this dream in 2018. Out of nowhere was given the interpretation of this dream, he said, in summer of 2019. And it started a chain reaction that went on for months. It sure seemed like it went on for so much longer than it actually did. But maybe that's because so much happened in a short amount of time. We were getting messages from Dad daily. He was saying that he was being woken up very early in the morning, sometimes middle of the night maybe, and God was speaking to him in real time. And he was being given messages, and he was able to communicate with God, and he would ask questions, and he would get the answers right then. And he started writing those things down, and he would send some of them to just the family, and he would send some of them to the whole church. And he, to this day, calls that a great move of God. And at the time, he said that God revealed to him that this was the latter rain that was spoken of in Revelation, I believe. Meaning these are the events that are leading up to the end, the Great Tribulation. And we may get into some of these more specific messages that he wrote us in dreams and prophecies, but you'll notice that Dad was the central figure in all of these things. The lion had eyes only for him. Later he was describing that dream in more detail, and he said that the brethren that were surrounding him, I think only 2 of them had facial features. Everyone else had a blank face, I personally was not at the Friday night praise and prayer service that kicked all of this off because I had a newborn. But, I think looking back at that time, I think about the people that were affected by this and were so sincere, as I said, who trusted him and just wanted, if he said, God is moving and he is showing me this or telling me this, they were hanging on every word. We were. And we trusted him and believed him. And that started just almost a daily communication from him to us about things that God was telling him. And it was almost kind of a bombardment of information. And he was, kind of passing to us information that things that God wanted to see and wanted to happen. And he framed it as if you did not fully get on board with this, then you were not worthy. you were not chosen to be a part of this end time work. And that was such a powerful component to this. Like the thought that you could spend your life devoted to this belief system and or this man and this particular tiny congregation in Arkansas. And if you did not get on board with this, no matter how it sounded to you, you could just be thrown to the wayside somehow, was really powerful.
I remember thinking at the time, because I, like probably many of us, did not understand, because you couldn't understand exactly what was going on, all the components. You just heard what was being said. I remember thinking about it in terms of when Jesus told his disciples, like, you got to eat my body and drink my blood type thing. And that there was one point when he said that prior to the Passover, I believe it was, in one of the Gospels, where some of the disciples left. And then the others were like, well, what are we going to do? You have the words of life, where it's almost like you think about like, this is weird and I don't understand it. But if I leave, what if I'm missing out on this, like the end time thing, like this small group that's going to be the people, not just part of the people. Like this is the group where it's all coming together. And so that's a very powerful way to keep people in that, where you're like, man,
so
like I knew we were special, but like, whoa, this is like another level. And then there were particular things about particular people, even things, that he said about me that were, looking back, meant to keep somebody like, whoa, stay right where you are. Like, don't make a move. Like, there's something special for you in particular. And there was a lot of that going around, and probably more than we even
dangling
know,
of carrots.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And there was the woman that he mentioned that he was baptizing in the stream. We will call her Sasha. She was also really central to this story and the series of events, and what is obvious now, what Dad was trying to do. He had shared with me, I don't remember exactly what time it was, but he told me that there was a point when Mom was counseling with Sasha on the phone and was having a lot of problems speaking with her and trying to help, and that God spoke to him and said, "She's your daughter." And so he asked for the phone, and that was kind of the point at which he started counseling her directly, whereas before Mom and I had done the lion's share of that. From that point on, it's my opinion that he truly believed that Sasha was his daughter, that somehow she wasn't allowed to be raised by him, but that spiritually and somehow literally she was his daughter and she belonged in our family.
Yeah, not as people say, like, you're like a son to me. You're like a daughter. Like,
no.
This was literal spiritual lineage.
Yes.
He was talking about.
That's right. Heritage. That's what he called it. Yeah, she's a part of my heritage. And which was, supposed to be a real privilege and a real gift. And so I don't think we can tell the story of how this whole thing started in 2019 without establishing that Dad had come to believe that Sasha was his own daughter. He felt that he had to help make her believe this. Sasha's own daughter, we'll call her Alex, she was then, if you do the math, she's my granddaughter. And so the man only had so much time. And at this point, he has grandchildren. But he is heavily investing in Sasha and Alex. And very early on, he told us that The flame that he mentioned in the interpretation of the dream that had been ignited in his heart, the fiery passion, the love of God, was passed to Sasha. And she was a very special and, in fact, essential, in his words, part of this whole movement. There's lots of things to tell about what happened in those months in 2019, but Dad did start spending copious amounts of alone time with Sasha. Many people bear witness to this. They would go to the church in the middle of the afternoon. Dad's car and Sasha's car are parked there, and they are back in his office for hours. And what he would come home and tell us was happening is that they were going back and forth somehow, and God was delivering.
Yeah, I remember he said in some of the messages that he sent to the family about that Sasha would ask him questions.
Yes.
And then before he could even say, like, I don't know, the Lord would quicken to him
That's right.
what it meant. And so Sasha was being used in that way to as a conduit to kind of bring the meaning, the interpretation of mysteries and these things, There was one clip that I played in a previous episode where it said, there were these, thousands of things that had been revealed. It's just every day, all day, thousands of things that had been revealed, mysteries that we have never known type thing. So that was the, just for the context of that, like that was where a lot of that was coming from, not just, Dad saying that he was hearing directly from the Lord and talking to him. He said that also. But then this part with Sasha, that's the way she was being used so powerfully, because they had this bond, the connection of that same flame of the, blazing love, I think is one of the ways that he described it.
Dad told Mom that he and Sasha had an ancient connection. He did not explain that, but he was trying to get us to believe that there was something very spiritual and kind of out of his hands about this relationship. Dad justified spending time alone with this woman. She was unmarried, in her maybe early 40s, because what God wanted was for us to love each other in new ways. And we were not to be concerned with how things appeared, which, as we all know, was a huge departure from what he taught from forever. So
it was so much about, you do not give the appearance of evil, even if you're doing something that is not nefarious at all. If it gives the appearance of evil, you might as well be doing it.
Yes.
Well, we talked about, Dad had always said he took the Billy Graham approach, even counseling women. Like, he wouldn't do that alone. And that went on for years. Like, that wasn't, he
Decades.
didn't abandon that. It was overnight, quite literally, that he was like, not anymore. So this was like a huge change that the justification for didn't really make a lot of sense, I think, at least to me. But
well, someone had prophesied about the church years and years ago that God was going to do a new thing here. And so that was easy. Here's the new thing, things that we've never done before. And that
goes back to the ambiguous prophecies that can be used at whichever time ends up being convenient to pull it out.
Yes. And it was, he was doing this thing that he felt compelled to do. And so then he sort of like passed it off to the rest of the church and said, this is also what you should be doing, basically. Like, you know, love on each other, hug each other, men and men, women and women, even men and women. He was very specific that things had changed and that this is what God wanted. And so he knew that there would be hesitation. He knew that there would be skepticism and people kind of questioning this. And so he nipped that in the bud by saying what I explained earlier. Like, if you are resisting this, you are not cut out for this end time work. You are not going to be a part of this. And, you know, just the thought that you could spend so much of your life investing in this one thing to ruin it at the end. So we all tried. I think I can say that of everyone. We all made an effort to get on board with this.
Did he say from the pulpit one day, here's, you know, the new playbook, so to speak, or was this kind of leaked out gradually over weeks and months?
He wrote it, and it was very plain.
Like to the church
yes.
Facebook page? Or
Yes, definitely. Yeah, he was very specific.
So you're like getting this notification. You've got to love all over each other.
Yes.
And like fall all over each other this Sabbath.
Yeah.
Well, and then
it
also
was that drastic.
There's another important distinction that happened very early on in the powerful move, where after our lunch service, normally we would have a Bible study, but now we had replaced the Bible study with more singing and praise for an hour or two. So some of the time people would go home, especially the people that would have children, but it remained this core group, you know, and he would just be testing the waters with us. It felt like it was like a, what is that room? They try stuff out in films, like a test audience type thing. It was like that, you know, so we would be up there and he would just go, you know what? You and you square dance. And I'm serious. Yeah, no, we were. I'm serious.
This is amazing new stuff.
This is brand new to me.
Yeah, we were in a circle, all of us. It was maybe like 10 strong, guys and girls. And he would pick people out. You guys, twirl, and then around, and then he kind of demonstrated at first, and then you all kind of pick up on it, and then your heart is beating because it's coming to me. You go, all right, yep, go with her, yep, and then about 45 minutes in, it was like a freak show. I remember a friend of mine at the church, I jumped on his back.
What?
And I was going, ah! I mean, it was obviously we were being silly, but this was not how it was. It was a very pious church. Now you could do all of this kind of stuff, and you could get a little crazy. But I mean, it was getting.
So it was really a promotion of physical contact. That was the main like core component of this love movement. Or what would you say?
I wouldn't necessarily say that touching was a core component, but it was, that was kind of beat into our heads that don't worry about what it looks like. There's going to be singing and dancing. Don't even let your mind think about it. Just do what feels natural. Of course, that doesn't feel natural ever, but it's expected of us to dance. I had to dance several times, slow dance kind of stuff. And then I got it wrong several times. So it was not like that, like this, you know, so it's just, you never, it was just constant chaos.
But don't forget the hugging.
The hugging was the worst. I mean, seriously, absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. I'm sure some of us liked it. I don't know if any of us in here, but you're talking 30 seconds, a 30-second deal for someone that I don't want to be unkind. Someone in the church that I'm not close with, you know? I'm just
curious how, like, what were the instructions given? Like, you need to hug each other for extended periods of time. Like
that wasn't explicit.
He literally modeled it, though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He said, don't do it like this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do it like this.
Yeah.
It's hard to say now. Looking at some of the specifics, it just seems glaringly obvious what he was trying to do. And so much of this did have to do with Sasha. Of course, he would vehemently deny that, but there's too many things, you know. He brought this woman kind of in between him and his wife at times. And she was in ways like exalted and of more importance than his own children. And so who he didn't have much time for anymore. And then he came up with this new doctrine that God gave him, that he saw us wearing cloaks, and they were cloaks of humility, and you guys may want to read the specifics on that. But, it's so obvious that he was manipulating us into accepting something that we never would have otherwise, by saying, oh no, this is your cloak of humility. This is what God requires. You have to accept this. And there were other things as well. But yes, I think physical contact was a pretty key component to what he wanted to happen and what he was saying God wanted.
The transparency of it now is pretty stark looking back, as it seems to me, and I don't think or know that this was an intentional, like, thought out thing. Like, I want to do this, let me set these things in place. But I think that's what was happening.
Yes.
And so looking
too.
back, it's like, so all the things that you wanted to do that you had explicitly preached against, just like the spending alone time, like, he couldn't just do that. He had to set the stage and make it okay for everybody else to be doing that same thing, and to be loving on each other in that same way, so that it's not just Dad and Sasha over here, like, having hour-long hugs, because that's weird. But not if this is the special love move that's happening, and the fire started with us, and we're passing it on to you guys, and this is what God wants and requires of everybody. So we got to do it. And if you don't do it and you don't like it, well, then you're probably not just, chosen for this special end time latter rain move. Like that, looking at it now is like, well, I know exactly what was happening. And of course, we've talked about it, like, he would vehemently deny that today, but, like, I have eyeballs. I was there, and looking back at it with some clarity now, it's like, well, it's very transparent to me what was going on.
I felt like it was immediately obvious to me, having been out for so long. I mean, the second I heard that stuff, I was like, oh, where this was going.
Bring out the
no
bed.
doubt in my mind.
Well, and I think you had said something earlier, to the effect about the people who were there, like, really wonderful people for the most part in the church. And I had always thought about you, Sandy, about how, you wanted to be pleasing to God, and you threw yourself into this, which was not comfortable for you in any way. It was opposite of your personality. But the way you and a few others in particular, I think we all were trying, because if it was a God's special move, like, we wanted to be part of it, that's how I felt. I did not understand it, but I remember telling Liz, like, I don't get this, but if it's God, then it'll happen. If it's not, then it won't. It was that kind of thing. Like, let it play itself out. Like, we'll see it by its fruits, But, there were, I feel like, a core group of people who really, really threw themselves into it with, like, the best of intentions. And I've always thought that about you. I just wondered about your perspective when this started. Like, what was your mindset when this thing first kicked off?
Well, I hated it at first. I really did, because it meant more, just to illustrate how much I did not want to be in the limelight in certain instances, I sat in the front row with another one of my friends. And if you sit on the front row, and you're a male, you're oftentimes going to be called upon to close in the prayer for the day. And I didn't want to do that. I hated that. So I finally, figured out how to get away from there and to be up with you and to do the camera stuff after a year of being there or whatever. But I felt like when all this stuff started happening, here we go. It's going to be spotlight time again, and you're going to have to get all crazy. And I was not comfortable with it, because some of the stuff that we haven't talked about yet, like the 4 hours of music on Friday nights, that we had like a 2-hour thing, and then it doubled because God really wanted, and it's like 4 or 5 hours on a Friday night. It's like I already dreaded coming Friday nights, but now we've doubled it. And now, I'm going to get called out to go, hey, would you like to, roll around and light yourself on fire or whatever it was? It was super uncomfortable. And then, some of the stuff, this really, I feel like, was in the beginning that I'm not sure on the timeline with this, but we would enter the church normally. Hey, good to see you. Happy Sabbath. Hey. We'd all sit down, take our seats, and then it was church time. But this was like... there was one day when your dad had this song on his heart.
It's August 17th, 2019.
Okay.
For the record.
He did have it.
Yeah,
that was on his heart that day.
We listened to that song at least 8 or 9 times.
Oh.
In
a row.
Run it again.
Yes.
And the third time I'm going, all right, you're really going to have to get into this, Michael, because, he's going to know. You got to get into this and really put your hand up harder or whatever. But then after the 6th time, play it, run it again. Come on. Are you serious? Run it again? But then this was an everyday thing, but then it just kept elevating. Not only is it going to be in the foyer anymore, we're going to do a procession with flags and outrageous.
Yeah. And also, for further context about the music, I was the one who was up there working the board, playing the music.
Yeah.
It was exceptionally loud.
It was very loud.
I like loud music. This was exceptionally loud. He would do the
the
signal. Come on,
finger in the air.
Yeah. So we got the signal. Let's pump it up.
Yeah.
Get that subwoofer bumping, and then on Friday night in particular, where you're talking about where it doubled. So we've got this exceptionally loud music, and we had a pretty good sound system, I think. And then we had very dim lighting, and then at that point, the lighting we had was this. I thought it was really beautiful. Like we would set it blue and purple, lighting where it was really pretty. And so you've got this dark setting, and this very loud music for extended periods of time, which we've talked about a little bit. So that's not an unknown tactic of high control groups. Like they use things like that. So I wanted to add that in for context. It's not just, hey, we're having some music. No, this is very particular what was happening.
It's to get you in a state.
Yes.
You're creating an experience, and then you can attribute that feeling that you had to something of a higher power. Just what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the kind of person that I am with music specifically, if the music is not something that's to my taste, it's going to be very hard with all those confetti flying down. It doesn't... really, there could be flames shooting up out of space. If the music is not right, then it's not, But we would pick music, oftentimes that was very good. So I had a lot of memories where I felt like this is something special, even though I don't quite agree with it yet. Just keep on faking it till you make it. Or we used a phrase at the church that was not fake it until you make it. It was act as if, which was a little bit more, it sounded better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question just a little bit further, I did start to kind of act as if more and more and more as the months went on, to where I went, just he keeps saying, don't worry about what it seems like. So I remember I got into just screaming like a wild man. I was just, as loud as I possibly could. I know you guys remember.
Oh yeah, and I remember you jumping on that guy's back.
You do?
Yes, I do.
I heard about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't, it was very embarrassing, especially now looking back on it, but it was embarrassing at the moment while it was happening. But I went, you know what? Just do it. And it's for the Lord ultimately. And he is one of the Lord's kind of, so just make him happy, so the embarrassment just kind of rolled away.
Well, you didn't want to be like Michal, King David's wife in the Bible. Where
Exactly.
She's like this guy out here looking like an idiot.
There you go.
And then he's like, your womb is stone,
Yeah.
whatever it was. Like,
yeah.
So you had that type of stuff in your head where it's like, well, it's weird. I don't get it. But again, I better get with it. Like, this is what's happening. Like, I don't want to be left behind.
Yep. That was a good observation. Very much like that.
Okay. Here is Song of Solomon 2:10 in the Passion Version. Arise, my dearest. Hurry, my darling. Come away with me. I have come as you have asked, to draw you to my heart and lead you out. For now is the time, my beautiful one. As I read that last sentence, for now is the time, the Spirit of the Lord fell upon me, communicating that this is the time, the appointed and defining time for our ministry to arise in anointing and the power of Elisha. Every person will look past the flesh and fall intensely in love with the Lord in them. Since the Lord lives in each one of us, there is a blazing love affair between the bridegroom, who we are as his passionate bride. In each of us, there is our love for him and his love for us, and both yearn for the other as if with unquenchable thirst. The Lord is going to bring that same passionate, even reckless love from brother to brother, from sister to sister, and between brother and sister. What we acted out and experienced on the last great day of the feast, since the time God had me have brethren to embrace, love on, and bless one another, has prepared us for this time. This is what our Father wants every Sabbath and all the time. People loving on each other, nurturing one another, sitting and resting on one another between services with no fear of what it may appear as. If some are too uncomfortable, then they are just not chosen or have been rejected to be a part of this end time work. It's God's sure and true will, and everything both for each person and our ministry depends on it. It will come to pass, and it will not be difficult, because God is not reviving us, though we've prayed for revival. As he is birthing an Elisha ministry in us, we will all become a new creation. He's already started with me. I am not who I was, and those who yield will be transformed with no shackles of the past in themselves or in their view of their brethren. It's glorious indeed and exceedingly powerful. The Lord spoke plainly to me and said, "This is new wine that I am pouring out, and it cannot be received in old wineskins." Old wineskins cannot contain the power of a double portion of the anointing of Elijah that was bestowed upon Elisha. The mantle has fallen to us at such a time, and perhaps the mantle itself will rest and abide in Matthew. The temples, God has given me these essentials. New wine cannot be contained in old wineskins. This is a new thing. Do not look back. Do not despise the day of small things. Yada, yada. The Lord told me to stop talking, yada, 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 told me to stop talking about and pining away for Solomon's temple. I asked what that meant, and he said, "You are praying for me to raise the dead with revival, but it was my will that Solomon's temple was destroyed, even to the uprooting of the foundational stones." That temple is the glory of the Crusade Church at its peak, and you're trying to rebuild what I tore down. As I sent the lion of Babylon to destroy Solomon's temple, I had granted to the lion Satan to wound and drag many of you away in order to destroy that temple. I think what is interesting, one thing I noticed in that was that, in saying, if any of you are uncomfortable with this, then here's what that means. That also then creates a situation where we are not honest with each other necessarily. Sandy and I are good friends, and I didn't know exactly how you felt, but looking back, I'm thinking, well, of course not, because we informed on each other, and or we're expected to at times. And so, putting it out there like that could also just be a way to keep everybody quiet and not really talking about what's happening, because you weren't going to sit down at a lunch table and somebody say, "What is going on here? What was that?" Mm-hmm. Because we were all, we were certainly all trying to get on board, and Dad came up with this fiery arrow teaching at some point, and he said to me, people have to stop dodging the arrow, because everybody just didn't get on board at once, and it wasn't going the way he wanted, so he started getting frustrated. And that's the way he saw it, was, I'm trying to accomplish something here, and you all need to really accept this. Accept that Sasha is a really key figure here, that God always uses the people that you would not expect. But it was more of I was just thinking of the bite model episode you guys did, where it just describes and explains more of how these tactics that are so common in these types of groups, describing discomfort, was something that is completely new and a complete departure from what you have been taught for, in some cases, decades. Then something's wrong with you. You're the problem.
And that interpretation, I think he shared that kind of was part of the kickoff to this whole thing. Am I remembering that correctly? Yes. Like I said earlier, I remember the first Sabbath where it really was a noted, like a major shift, was, in mid-August of 2019. And I think the week prior to that was when maybe he had shared that, and some things had started to happen. And Sandy, that's where you can kind of talk about your recollection of the week leading up to really that first Sabbath, where there was a major change. And you already talked about like the procession of entering the, sanctuary with the song 8 or 9 times, but it was the week leading up to that where it really, like, the kickoff for that. So what do you remember about that?
Yeah, I wish that I was there because I almost was. I'd be able to have a greater insight into what actually happened. But I think we have put it together enough to know that was the catalyst for the last days of the Crusade Church. As far as I remember it, either the church page that we have on Facebook was kicking off, which I think it was, but I think I found out through Jen, who called or texted and said, "Do you know what's going on over at Dad's house?" And I said, yeah, it's, by the looks of it, it's getting pretty crazy over there. And I was always kind of apprehensive to moves of God, because I had never really experienced anything like that, although I really did want to. But I was kind of afraid. I was driving around the area, a small town, and thinking, you could just go over there right now. Just pull up and just peek your head in. And, but the more that I was understanding about what was taking place there, the more apprehensive I got. And, I was just stalling, because I didn't really want to be a part of that, because what was taking place was a lot of affection between people that, you got a farmer in there, you got a young 30-year-old athletic build guy, you got a young teenage girl. Like, I don't want to be a part of this. We're all going to be laying on top of each other and just going, "Oh man, I love you." Like, I'm going to have to act that out, and I will do it if necessary, but I do not want to do it. There's like a limit. There's a point of uncomfortability that I just can't do it. And so we started seeing pictures like that were surfacing, right? I think that picture surfaced within the hour of all these posts, and you look at that and go, "No, I just."
What was the picture?
It was a picture of 4 or 5 people of different walks of life, all kind of huddled up on each other, just smiling and just loving on each other. It was the golden love of the Lord, on them. And there was some pretty wacky stuff going on in there. As far as I remember, one thing that it was upsetting to one of the members in a major way. And he's very close to me. He's about 34 years old. There was another woman in the church that we'll call Alex, and your father said to this older man, "Behold your bride," and then made his arm, like, "Behold your bride, Alex. This is your bride." And this man was extremely confused by what he meant by it, and actually was trying to get clarification throughout the day, weeks, months. Like, what was he saying? He wasn't meaning that, right? I mean, she's like 17, 16 or something at the time. And that always really, really bothered him. And I mean, that's totally inappropriate to be. Nobody really knows what was going on with that. We think it's probably more of a spiritual lesson in it all. And that's the thing that's so sick about all this, is that you can basically do whatever you want and then just blanket it with your, "Oh no, it's a spiritual thing." And like, you do it. There's any rule, like there's just tons and tons and tons of ammunition, because there's nothing to stop you. You can just always change the rules.
And not only could one do that, that was used in that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, "Oh, this is dangerous." Like, no, it was used in that way. Exactly.
Yep. So I remember coming in at the tail end of that love display, and I was hoping that it would be over, and it was, but I also kind of wanted there to, maybe God would kind of give me some lightning or something, but your dad had a big old smile on his face, and he was kind of describing to me what was taking place in there, and it was surreal. And I felt like we all knew at that point, from hearing this message that Jen just read, that it was going to be different now. And then it sure was. The next Sabbath service was never the same. And then the rules changed, from week to week to week, and it's just got real loopy.
So what was a typical service like then? Like, what was the schedule or the itinerary?
With the new change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess, the viewers don't know, but the church services before the change were extremely long. You'd get there at 10 and you'd wrap things up around 3 or 4. That's outrageous, but we would always make the case that, we're doing God's work here for far longer than these Sunday churches that are, they're here for half an hour, then they're able to get into the buffet at the Golden Corral, We would constantly do that kind of stuff, constantly be harping on the people that were there for an hour,
That was something talked about even in the Worldwide Church of God, because those services were long as well. And it was always a comparison to Protestant churches and how they were just in and out and they weren't really learning. These weren't real sermons. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like Dad really went a little more extreme than Worldwide did with the length, but the same concept.
Yep. So the services were still very long, except now you entered God's courts or the Crusade Church in a different way, in a very celebratory way that was very uncomfortable in the beginning. But then you can go back and look at some of our messages from that time and go, "This guy's insane." I mean, people would be taking their seats and I was still up on the stage a few times dancing and singing to the music, just don't care what it looks like. I was really trying to embrace that. And part of that was that in my personality, I've kind of always wanted to be special, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll be seen as being special. Maybe Larry will notice this young man's got quite an anointing. I'll elevate him to my second chief or whatever, A lot of that was going on, no doubt about it. But I think that the services did get extended, but just with a whole bunch of extra kooky stuff, certainly in the beginning. And then after our lunch came second praise service, which was insane. That could be 2 hours, 3 hours long.
Yeah. It could when our normal structure before this change, just generally, and if I miss something, you guys can fill in. But just so people know, like we started off with the hymns, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we would have, I've already forgotten the order.
Sermonette.
Was it sermonette? Yeah. And sometimes it would be 2, short sermonettes. And then we had reading of the psalm, I think. And then as the psalm's being read, the worship team takes the stage, and that was usually 35 to 45 minute, song service. And then we would have announcements, which often those would go, this would go 30 minutes plus.
That was sometimes just a message in itself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of really wild stuff during this particular time was said during that portion. Like, it wasn't a message. It was just, it's time for announcements, and then let's get into some weird stuff. And then we would have special music, usually 2 or 3, and then the sermon would begin. And that typically, if it was Dad giving the sermon, 1.5 hours, 1:20, kind of is where it would be. It would vary, but that was typical. And then we would have closing prayer, and then go to have potluck, and then we would reconvene at 3, correct? To have, there'd be women's Bible study and then men's Bible study separately, and that typically was an hour. We didn't do that every single Sabbath, but usually. And then after that, there would be, people would be hanging around. So it was not unusual at all for people to be there from 9:30 to 5, 6. Like, that was normal.
Mm-hmm.
It was like an all-day thing. Now, when it changed, that was where Dad would deliver a list of songs that he wanted. And we would all gather in the kind of lobby area that's outside of the sanctuary and listen to these songs as I played them loudly through the speakers in the sanctuary. And it would usually, I think, be like a 3 or 4 song list. And then there was one particular song that was like the entrance song.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, like at the beginning, like we were listening to that like repeatedly. And then we would, to that song, enter into the sanctuary down the aisle slowly and make our way to the stage. And that was always led by Sasha waving. So there was something about that, and maybe we can get into that, and if we can remember, but there was some significance to like the color of the flag, some spiritual meaning from some prophecy or something to that effect. But that Sasha would lead the way with the flag with Dad, and then other people behind. We would make our way up to the stage and then listen to that song often multiple times. And like if anybody wants to, you can go check out like the live streams. We weren't streaming the music because we couldn't, but like you would just see us up on the stage for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then at the early goings of the Love Move, which is kind of what we were calling it at that time, the services did not have a normal structure. I think it settled into a new structure at some point, but it was just kind of everything was different and new, which I think was by design. But anyway, that's a long-winded way to kind of show the difference between what it was and what it became. But it was completely, everything about it was different, not just structurally, but what we were doing. And, you're loving on each other, doesn't matter what it looks like, was a huge component of this. I think for me, the major component that was said ad nauseum.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody wanted to check out some of those photos, it would be really easy to find. Maybe you can even offer some.
Yeah.
But they're those first weeks when we're all up on the stage, it looks as if there's a hole that God cut out of the roof and we're all looking at him, right? Unbelievable. Because I don't think anybody, I can't say that, but for certainly myself, I was just emulating everyone else going, you see what he's doing? Do that. We were all having to do that because keep in mind, Larry's always scanning the room. He's scanning. So I don't want to be the one face he looks at and he goes, Sandy, we need to talk after. So everyone is just, it's unbelievable, these photos. As if God is just smiling down on us. And it really does make me upset seeing those photos. And I wish that they wouldn't be posted ever again. Sandy? Would you like to dance with Alex? No. Go on ahead.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I mean, that's a good point that he's doing this with a teenage girl. I mean, that's so incredibly
And let me tell you,
inappropriate.
Dad, if he felt like there was a young person, usually a woman, who was like at risk, like, she's starting college, she's going to meet somebody, they're going to get a real job, they're going to be out in the world, he would start matchmaking. The craziness of this, it's outrageous. It's like,
it's like you want to scream it so that people understand, like, here's how fucking nuts it was.
I know.
Then there's too much.
Yeah.
And also it's what he said, like the story, the dream of the reckoning, the vision of the reckoning, the lion and stuff. You want to like tell that and say like, this is what he was saying, but why he was saying it, what he was accomplishing through these dreams, visions, prophecies, stories, that's important. What he was doing to people.
Bringing it back to these are cult tactics.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the point. It's like,
you've done that a few times.
Yeah. Okay,
like,
good.
I thought that was good.
Yeah, you did on a couple, even like I talked about the music thing, and then you're like,
yes.
Yeah. But all of these things, what stands out to me is that, so she's supposed to be this important figure in all of this and integral to this end time work that's happening. And yet Dad is sequestering her off to the side. Is it ever with Mom involved? Is it ever with Mom in the room? Or like, it's always in some kind of weird, secret, private manner.
Yes.
And that is so suspect.
Yes.
Why would it need to be that way? Why would you need to separate that from your wife? Why would you need to go behind closed, locked doors?
Well, that's what was never explained, and everyone was just supposed to go, well, all right. So he had already set up the pattern.
And then, she was special. Like, she was receiving messages, right?
Yeah, of course. But you question the pattern, and then you're going to be one of the ones on the list that says, you're not ready for this great move.
Yeah,
so everyone just shut up. And then when people did start talking, then that's when everything fell apart. Like, it took nothing for it to fall apart. One person said something's going wrong, and then it was done like in a week. Seriously, it was so fast and then everyone went, why have I stayed? I remember thinking, why am I here? This is outrageous that I'm here. And then, of course, we did Crusade Church 2.0, which was really pathetic, but it was unbelievable how quickly it changed. And then everyone's thinking, like, why did we not do something? But he had the pattern set.
Why did no one speak up?
Yeah.
We were all seeing it. And right there on December 7th, we watched him walk up to Mom, get in her face and say, go stand somewhere else.
Ooh.
I was standing right beside her, and so was Sarah.
Yeah, you missed that, right?
I must have been over here, because then I must have turned around, and then I thought, what the hell happened in here? Something happened. And then I quickly found out what happened, because I'm friends with her, and I know what happened in the parking lot with Michael and her and all this stuff.
Makes me so angry that he thought he was anything at all. Like, he's nothing. Don't put that in there. I don't need to be really extra mean, but he's just a person. Where does he get off thinking he can treat people like this and treat Mom like she's property? That is the kind of thing that just, like, I don't feel like super angry about him unless I think about specific things like that, especially with Mom. Just use and abuse her like that.
Oh, and just humiliate her in front of her.
Yes, that makes me feel like I hate him.
Yes.
Like I feel like I hate him.
And he blamed her for that event. He turned that on her so fast. That day you stormed out. Shane thinks that you...
We will have to bring that up because that is a classic narcissistic trait.
Exactly. Yes.
It's the gaslighting. It is making you think you're crazy and, did I? Like, how did that happen? You have to retell the story to yourself.
So we described some of the new behaviors that Dad had and what was expected then of the church out of everyone, if you wanted to really remain in good standing and be a part of this thing that was happening. That was very intense, it should be said. I think, Sandy, you covered that. I think, we can just speculate, and I definitely have, on why he kind of keyed in on certain things. And Sasha in particular struggled with her mental health, and she kind of discovered on her own that she fit the profile of someone with borderline personality disorder, and then just kind of dove into the research on that and shared it with our family, and it fit. And there is something about the mix of narcissistic traits and those types of personalities with borderlines. There's an intensity to those relationships, and I think that she in particular offered Dad supply in that she would hang on his every word. And, I think you said it, Matt, we had grown up and we were, had our own families and lives, and we were stable and generally happy. And Sasha moved from crisis to crisis, and Dad got involved and started helping her work through these things in her life. And, we can't get inside that relationship. Those doors were locked where they would meet, or when they would go drive up through the mountains for hours at a time alone. But it sure does appear that Dad's kind of directive for all of the members of the church to have this new heightened level of physicality and affection with each other was a cover and kind of a permission for him to do the same. We wouldn't know what happened behind those closed doors, because even though he preached for years and years and years that he would never counsel a woman alone, and he always had my mom alongside him, always. Special important meetings, Mom was there. She might not say a word. She was always present. And this was a radical shift, and we all felt it, but it was what we were all supposed to be doing. Dad was not reprimanding people for doing what, the week before would have been frowned upon. And so it kind of just gave him permission to engage in this just inappropriately close relationship. I don't really think I understand or have even a strong opinion on why exactly that was happening and what they were each getting out of it. But I know that there was a lot of manipulation going on. And I know that from things that Dad told me about their dynamic. He somehow, this is my opinion, but I perceived that Dad enjoyed putting people in a state to where they would be kind of desperate for him.
Absolutely.
I experienced that.
Same.
Okay.
Same.
Yes. He would put me on ice, and he would just let me sweat, while he ignored me, knowing that I was desperate to get in touch with him because I knew he was upset and I wanted to make it right or whatever. And I think he could do that so easily with Sasha. And there was something about how frantic she would get, and, and so they somehow, in these meetings, the way that it was relayed to us is they were feeding off of one another. And so, just like you guys described, like dim lights and emotional music and late nights and long services, they all do something to achieve this certain goal to get you in a certain state. And I think,
You're exhausted. Your defenses are down.
Yes. And you're very, very susceptible to suggestion. And so I know people who had lots of auditory, visual types of what they would probably call hallucinations or something of the like.
Well, they would have called them visions.
Then
right?
they would.
Yeah.
Now they would call them
right.
something else. But yes, just they can't really stand behind them. But at the time, yeah, I saw this and I felt this and I think I heard this. And so, yeah, Dad and Sasha get in a room together and she says, there's something about a serpent that's trying to harm you. And then Dad comes up with, aha, it's that guy. And he then sends us all a message about this one particular guy who had come around the church now and then who he didn't want anybody to have any contact with, or she says, I feel like I see a highway. And Dad, yeah, there's a highway. It's a highway of holiness. And we're going to go down that road together. It's on and on, but it's, there are, as has been stated, too many things too many examples and too many stories and too many dreams and visions to get into. But I think now it's pretty easy to look back on each of them individually and be able to kind of parse out what was at the heart of those things and what Dad was actually trying to do. And when I say trying to do, I don't know how aware he was of what he was doing. I think, as you've said, Ash, that he was a victim in a way of his own delusions. He believed the things that he was saying. But there was no way for him to carry on a relationship with this woman in the way that it turned out to be without shifting things in the church in a big way. So he did that. And then the things that followed, insisting that we accept her and finding different as a family member. Okay. We loved her, but he was insisting, he made promises to her, you'll be at family dinner. You'll have a seat at the table. It's just, it got really bizarre and it was wildly uncomfortable for the entire family, some more than others. But I bore witness up close to Mom's acute suffering during this time because of this relationship. And Dad said to me once that the hardest part of this whole thing is the pain that Mom's in. As if he wasn't on his own inflicting the pain.
Yeah.
By publicly disrespecting her and replacing her with someone else. And a younger woman at that. She was humiliated.
And with no empathy.
No.
Whatsoever. No consideration for the impact it was having on her.
It was in word only. That's why I say he said to me, the hardest part is the pain Mom's in. But he wouldn't change it.
But was he saying the hardest part for him was that Mom was in pain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Ugh. So with Dad's kind of directive and proclamation of what we were to do as a church and how things were to radically change to accommodate this new ministry that God was birthing in us, it was kind of the perfect cover for the behavior that he was exhibiting with Sasha. This move in the church started with the interpretation of this dream that Dad had had the year prior, which was not unusual. This happened on occasion. But this one in particular held the power to radically change the church in foundational ways. And that came out in some of the things that Dad wrote to us that were from God, he said. He gave us these new rules, and he said God called it new wine. And this was a new thing, a new ministry. And it was basically, the feel of it to me looking back was that we were expected to just buckle up because we were on this ride, and wherever it took us, we were supposed to just sit tight and basically be on board with whatever happened, and to trust him at the helm. And there were just things that were being set up to excuse certain behaviors that would never have been acceptable or accepted. You know, someone would have spoken up, I would say. But really, those first few messages and that dream were just the beginning of what was to come.
If you like this episode of The Cult Next Door, please leave us a positive review and rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new episodes.